Well, welcome back to the Know Your Numbers REI podcast. Your host, Chris McCormack, and today we have a special guest in the name of Martha Picciao. I'm very excited to have her on the show, share some of her experience. Martha is an entrepreneur and has quite the backstory of building a business when time wasn't the most surplus or abundant resource in her life. Single mom at the time of building the business, and built what was a home daycare into what is now a multi-location daycare. I believe I saw Martha is 150 plus employees and 500 plus students. So really remarkable success, and excited to have you on the show. But if you will, just do a little bit more of an introduction, because obviously you know yourself a little bit better than I do.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for having me, Chris. I always call it an honor and a pleasure to, be on podcasts and be able to share my story, but most importantly, hopefully leave people with just a few nuggets that they can walk away and implement, And so, I started my teaching career teaching at a school district. And then shortly after had my now 18-year-old son, which is crazy to think. But over the years, one thing led to another. And I think that's the thing about entrepreneurs is as we learn and implement, that's where true change happens. It's not meeting the goals. It's who we're becoming in that process towards our aspirations as we work towards them. But we have built, my husband and I now have built, we've opened 8 schools. We've ended up selling, 2 over the years and currently have 6 open locations with a few hundred students here and there at every one of them. So it is definitely snowballed way out of what I ever thought, dreamt, never even imagined. My dream was going from, the classroom to having a home preschool to then having, my dream was to have one childcare center. And here we are, 6 locations later, but it's all possible, right? When you know what you know that you have to do the thing that God lights a fire somehow. Sometimes I think, why me? Yeah. Why did why this? But the process has been great. Not all days are beautiful, but the biggest game changer for me was knowing my numbers. So that's what I can tell you. That's what helped me leverage grow my little business. So
Oh, that's so exciting. How did it start to evolve? When did the vision really come into play for you, where you were like, wow, we really have something that could scale? Because it sounds like it didn't start out as this is going to be the $1 million venture that it is now.
No, it started out of a need. I needed obviously to provide for my family, and I was teaching and had a baby. And so when I knew that I had a talent, and I started teaching Sunday school when I was a teenager, and that's kind of how I thought I could make this a career. So went to college to be a teacher. And so I knew that I loved that. That was my thing. I knew that I was good at it. I enjoyed it. And when I went through an unfortunate divorce, I wasn't sure how I was going to be able to continue my business out of my home and be able to be with my kids. And so when I got the opportunity to take over an existing underperforming school, that was the biggest step. But then when I learned that the actual business was knowing your numbers, and that at the time that meant, you got taxes, you have payroll taxes. I knew nothing of those things. I had a home daycare. So it was very eye-opening, very hard, a hard pill to swallow because you think you're getting some revenue in and you're making your budgets until then you get surprised, and then you have to hire accountants and people to tell you, you're not in Kansas anymore, Martha. You got to get some things, some ducks in a row.
Yeah.
And so then I did that for about 2 years. And then I figured this isn't going to make a lot of money. It was a small location. And I knew there was just something, I don't know. I can't even tell you at this point. I haven't even started coaching. I was just knees deep, all in. We were working weekends. I knew that we had to scale. I knew that I could do this, but I needed to be in a larger scale, have a bigger school. And so then I found my second location just driving around town, looking for spaces before. I mean, I was so scrappy. I didn't even think I was big enough for, I don't want to say good enough, but I don't think I even knew to look for a broker to go look for a place. Like,
Wow.
I just started driving to see what area of town, if I could find an empty building, I'd like look through windows and plazas and I drove past this school that had a sign for lease. And I almost want to say like the rest is history. We were in a 3,200 square building. We still have that building. That's our first original school, but 3,200 square foot building, paying a few $1,000 rent.
Mm-hmm.
This building that I drive by was like 9,000 square feet, almost $20,000 rent. So the delta between, 3,000 to 20,000 was massive. My husband thought I was insane when I told him, I'm like, let's go look at this building.
Mm-hmm.
And we did it. I ended up selling a house, the only house I had at the time, to put down the first month's, security deposit and last month's payment. But I knew that I had to do it. Like, all my dreams were going to come true on this second location. It was beautiful. And it really was. It was the game changer for us. It was where the numbers were. We had the numbers to scale and the numbers to make. That's where I made my first $1 million. Yeah.
Oh, that's exciting. So when was the, because oftentimes when you feel that call to do something, put money down, take a risk, buy a building, or put a deposit down on a building that you'll soon be renting that's far bigger than anything you've experienced. Like, there is that period of time between when you start and when you know that you're called to it and when it actually starts paying off. Was there a big time gap between when you put the deposit down and when you started to see money come in and see it actually start to multiply and get to a level that was sustainable?
Yes. It took about 2 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. It took about 2 years, only because at that point you gotta think about that entrepreneur who did it all. Yeah. There was no team yet. Mm-hmm. I had, of course, a team of teachers. I wasn't in every classroom. That's impossible. But I was basically the director, the assistant director, the leader, the HR department, all of that. Yeah. And so when I did it at my first location and then I went to the second, I kind of had trained somebody, but that's where, when they say you want to know yourself, become an entrepreneur. Yeah. That's when I was really tested, because now I was split into two and there was only one of me. Yeah, right. And so I was forced to learn how to delegate. I was forced to learn how to hire. And I didn't really know. I started dabbling in getting help and, listening to podcasts and YouTube coaching. And you just start searching for the thing. And I went to HR classes and just how to hire and how to fire, and how everything just started going from this mom and pop shop operation to now having to really structure and build a system out. Right. And I didn't even know that was what you say. Now I know that's the thing you do. Mm-hmm. And so it was very hands-on, like learning on the job. Right. But it took a good 2 years and I was on the verge of a nervous breakdown, I remember. And I had an infant at this point. He was about 8 or 10 months old while in this process. Yep. And I remember my husband finally telling me, you either have to hire someone or you can't do this anymore. Because I was coming home at 8 p.m. Mm-hmm. My parents were helping us. They moved in for a few months because I literally physically had to be at work to get this thing up and running. And so it was not a fun time. But I'm so thankful for, an amazing husband who understood and who was gracious, even though it was hard for all of us and parents that were there. But now I wouldn't do that again. I would maybe learn before and get some mentorship beforehand. I just didn't know that existed. Yeah.
Wow. No, that's powerful. And it's like we have this idea when, social media kind of gives us this idea that when we see somebody at whatever level they're at, that that's where they've always been, and there wasn't any challenges. So I appreciate somebody like you, Martha, who's willing to tell us the real story. And as we're in the middle of it and building businesses of our own, we can kind of relate to it. Like there's struggles and challenges, and it's not all of that sunshine and rainbows that it might look like on the outside. So you don't always hear about that. And so I guess that's credit to you for making that one. And it's cool to hear that like you would approach it differently, but like you learned and you have the scars, if you will, to tell the story and now you also have a reward for your works as well. You guys have built something pretty amazing. You've talked a little bit about the numbers part of it. When you started to get into business and started to see the importance of the numbers, how did your approach change? What were some of the challenges that came along with like running a business the way that you're supposed to, where you know your numbers and you're looking at cash flow and profit and income and expenses and making decisions based off that? What were some of the biggest adjustments that you had to go through?
Well, I think anyone in a teaching industry, childcare industry, that type of industry, we are very heart-centered and passionate people.
Right.
Right. And so it's not an easy job, and you have to love it. You have to have your heart in it. The caveat to that is when you're running a business, often it's hard to make data-driven decisions when your heart is telling you, but I need to buy all these supplies, or the kids need this, or I would really love it if we had this new set of, whatever. And so, in my mind, I originally would run things, what came in, I was kind of budgeting, and I would, if we needed a new playground set, which were very expensive, I'd kind of know what was the time, but everything was just kind of feeling, it was just this, I wish I could say I was very organized and data driven and like, okay, let me look at my spreadsheet and my projections for the year. And is this in the budget? I didn't really have strong budgets and things like that. And so what ended up happening was there was all these highs and lows and this roller coaster constant. And it was just getting harder and harder because the risk was bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
And at some point, you also want to pay yourself. And so all this time, like the first few years, I did not get paid essentially. And so then my husband and I kind of just had this, like, is it worth, we're doing all this stuff, we're sacrificing all this. I mean, he would work all week. He had his own business. And then on the weekends, we were physically working, fixing the gardens and painting. And I was, doing all the paperwork that I didn't have a chance during the week. And so at some point you get burnt out and you say, is this worth it? And we knew that we could make it work. But the thing that was at that point kind of our biggest obstacle to overcome was our numbers and our books. And so we got help. I hired, I went from just the tax preparer type of CPA to getting somebody who was going to do our books. So that was really hard because we kind of had to go backtrack all these years and then start looking at data and looking at our habits and kind of, it's interesting as humans, how we repeat pattern. And so then when you start seeing, I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, I did this repetitively.
Yeah.
And then she started teaching me like, okay, let's start creating budgets. Like if we see this track record, we know that there's a dip in the season and there's a high in the season in enrollment. And then, we just started making projections based on our history and then making goals for, okay, if we want a new playground set, that's going to cost us $150,000. How are we going to put this in the budget without just on a whim, hey, next month we're expecting a big check, let's go buy a playground, which had originally been how I operated. I'm an operations person. I'm a visionary. I'm not the detail oriented type of, person. And so it was a learning lesson, but it was a great one because when I learned that, and now I don't do anything. I'm all about the data, right? I'm all about our numbers and I'm all about projections, and we do things by quarter and we do things very detailed, very driven by our financial goals. We still our mission is still at the forefront of everything we do. I will not, put that at risk, of course, like maybe larger corporations. And I understand that piece,
Right.
numbers are numbers. So yeah, it was a hard kind of hike.
Yeah.
But once we got it, we're like, okay, I like the view here. This is good.
That's awesome. It's amazing what data, and specifically financial data, can teach you about your habits. I think of it like a personal finance. If you're looking at your data and you feel like there's no money left over every month, and then you go back and you see that Dave Ramsey talks about it, like the $5 lattes every day, or going out to eat and not cooking at home, like that stuff adds up. And yeah, you might have the money in the bank, but it's not going to allow you to grow the investments as you should, or as you want to, or pay yourself if it's on the business. And the personal finance is no different than the business finance. That's what most people are surprised by. They think now that you're a business, it operates differently, and you can draw out all the budgeting and the financial wisdom that you learn, or maybe don't learn along the way, but it is two peas in a pod. It carries over quite a bit.
100%.
What was it like for you growing up though? Were finances like a conversation at all, or was this all kind of new to you, and this is how you learned it, by just kind of throwing yourself in the fire?
Yes. So I am a daughter of two immigrants. My father is from Italy and my mother is from Mexico, both college graduates. My dad was an accountant, or, by trade in Italy, and I kind of ironic. And my mother went to college to be a travel agent. Back in the day, that was a thing. And so they met here at English. They were at a community college learning English, and they met. And so I am a first generation. And, my parents taught me all about work ethic. Faith was a big component of our life. Our life revolved around church and giving and serving. Mm-hmm. And I'm grateful for all those lessons, because inevitably they molded a lot of who I am today. Mm-hmm. There was a sense of scarcity for sure, and fear, some taboo around money. If you grew up in church, you may or may not have experienced this. I know it's what they knew now. Now I understand it's what they were taught and what they knew to be true to them in that season. And now I know God is a God of abundance, and God honors the cheerful giver. Money is not the root of all evil. It's the love of money and who we become in that pursuit for what people would consider greed. I now look at it obviously very different. I think I've learned, I have known scarcity in my time of being a single mother. I was on food stamps, and I vowed to just give my children a different example. Never plan, as a college graduate, my parents taught me, you're going to go to college, and you're going to, do all the things. And so I did all the things I was supposed to do, right? I went to school. I put myself through school and get married, have kids. And then all of a sudden I'm just found in the season of my life that it wasn't supposed to be that way. And God, where are you? And I don't know why I'm here. And I remember not having a washer and a dryer. And so on the weekend, when I wasn't running my home daycare, our outing was to go with my toddlers, was to go to the laundromat. And there was a Mexican grocery store next to it. So we would love to go get the sweet bread or the fun ice creams. So we would that was our Saturday afternoon outing, was going to the laundromat, doing our laundry, and then grabbing some treats at the grocery store. And my boys remember that. They remember us going to the laundromat, because now I'm always like, we need to buy laundromats. And I'm trying to teach them this entrepreneur mindset, and how can we invest and get assets that are producing, that have low employees.
Yeah.
And so, but if you think of where you start, money, fear, then you have scarcity, and then you want out of that, you learn that God honors our action. He honors our work when we also honor him, and I've always been a giver, and I mean, that's just a rule. I didn't write it. And so I learned to give for my parents. I learned how to work, but I've had to shed that identity that wanting abundance or working and building is bad in some way. And I'm able to give more than I ever thought I would, and to the ministry and to the causes that my heart aches for. Single moms are a big thing because I was one, and I get it. And not everyone has the opportunity that I have, that I had at that time. And so I think we're all called in a different way and gifted in a different way to go out and make an impact. And it's not just so I can buy new toys and go on vacations. It's all good. That's not evil. But who are we when we get to that, to that summit? And there's always a bigger summit. There's always a bigger mountain to climb. You never feel like you arrived to this. Like, you ask me now, I'm like, oh my gosh, I am so far from, where I want to be. But I look back and I'm grateful and thankful and humbled for sure.
Oh, that's so great. You're speaking our language. Jasmine, she bought another colleague of yours or mutual friend, Rachel Wortman, her book,
love Rachel.
The Money Mandate. And basically what you're saying is everything that she's writing about. She's actually coming on in a couple of weeks to talk about it. But it's amazing because I know all three of you guys are in close connection and you're in the community and you guys think alike and you have a desire to grow and you believe that God has called you to grow. And I believe that there is a segment of the church, the body of Christ, that is moving in that direction. And it's just exciting to know that none of us are alone. And especially for you, woman of faith, you guys are in it together too. That's really inspiring. So yeah, I'm excited for people to hear this. I guess for you, Martha, well, one, you can respond to that, but two, also, if you don't mind just sharing a little bit more about your faith and how you've because you've been through some stuff, being divorced and a single mom and running a business and growing at a level that you didn't expect. Now you see it a little bit more clearly, but how did your faith play into that journey and how has it shaped you to be who you are today?
Oh, there's no doubt in my mind that had it not been for my faith, I don't know that I could even, be here to talk about it the way that I'm talking about it. And so definitely not me. It was all God, and I call it God confidence, confidence, because sometimes you just need to be a little crazy and believe that you can do the thing, not because of you, but because of who lives in us and thinking of faith. That's where faith is activated when we feel incompetent or when we feel so small or insignificant. I feel like just last week I had my David and Goliath moment. I had to pick up the phone. I am buying and selling a building, and these people were calling me. My attorney, my broker had told them to stop, reaching me. They were texting me, calling me, emailing me. They started calling my office number, asking for me repeatedly. And the, my gal at my office lady called and was like, hey, these people keep on calling, asking for you. What should I say? Or is everything okay? And I'm like, what is happening? I have been buying and selling, property and buildings and businesses for years now. I had never experienced something like this. So I started panicking a little, if I'm being honest, what is happening? Why are they I just felt it was so out of line. It almost felt like harassment. They weren't getting what they wanted out of me. And so then they wanted to talk to me. Yeah. And I remember calling the attorney and saying, I think that I just need to pick up the phone and just put an end to this. Yeah. And I said, but I don't want to say something and it backfire, right? And I said, this is a development group. You're right here. You're looking at the development group, the real estate group, the marketing department. I'm still that scrappy entrepreneur. Yeah. I've gained some skills, but I still feel sometimes when I'm dealing with these much larger groups that have deeper pockets, that have layers of teams and professionals and lawyers and negotiators, who am I when I compare myself to that, I
Right.
feel way out of place.
Mhm.
And my attorney, which was interesting, was like, actually, I think you should try. You should call. I think you can handle it. And he's like, you don't have to talk a lot. Just listen and just say you'll get back to them, you know? And so I prayed. I anointed my head. I anointed my office. Literally, I felt so just, it's small.
I love
And
it. Yeah.
I just said, okay, Lord, just like, I'm like, just like David, he had a giant in front of him, but it wasn't him. It was you in him. And you are my army. You are my justice. You are my attorney. You know all the things. And so I am going to not think of myself as how I'm thinking. I'm just going to go for it. So I picked up the phone and handled my business. And I hung up, and it didn't, not everything went exactly how I wanted it to go, but we closed the deal. We came to an agreement. I told him my thoughts and we settled it, and he later, at the end of the conversation, there was a few chuckles after there was a lot of back and forth. And he said, wow, I think I'm going to cut you a check for the coaching session you just gave me on the value of time. Because I said, I don't have time. And so when you think about that and I look back, that has been the pivotal thing for my life. And everything I do, doesn't matter how I feel in the moment. I just do what I got to do. I pray for help. Sometimes I have to ask for forgiveness. Like, oh, maybe I jumped too soon, or I should have waited, or, the should have, could have, would have. But in the end, God's always been there to hold me. I have never not been able to feed my kids. I've never I've never lacked. Even when I didn't lack. And it's all because of my faith. I have no other explanation for it, because I am not that smart. And I'm just, I think, determined. And then I have the God confidence. I really do. I just really believe in what he says. And so he'll figure it out for me, even if it doesn't go the way I think it's going to go. He is always there. And I think that's the best thing. And to your earlier comment about Rachel Wortman's The Money Mandate, I just ordered it. But I also, her previous book, The Expansion Mandate, is amazing. I read it twice. I even did a Bible study, book study with my local church group.
Wow.
It is great. And it's us expanding. It's who we become in the pursuit, in the process, while he's working in us and through us. And that's really where the power lies, is in that journey. And so it's all about the faith. It's a lot of work. If we do it in our strength, we will give up, to be honest. It's not for the faint of heart.
No, not at all. But I appreciate that about you, Martha, is that you do share, like I said earlier, the real parts of it. And I think sometimes, because not everybody listening to this is going to be in the same faith position as you, and some are believers and others are definitely not believers. And so I think one thing, at least speaking from me, like as somebody who has come to faith more recently, like we get this idea about people of faith, specifically the Christian faith, that like they have this idea that it's all sunshine and rainbows. And I think that's a distorted view of what Christians truly believe, because of what Jesus had to do. Like there is no sunshine and rainbows in his story, the Gospels, but it does turn into glory. And so when I have somebody like you on that's bold about what they believe and who they're following, but also willing to say that in this world you will have trouble, but take heart, for the King has overcome the world. It's awesome, because I know that there's people out there that are listening to this that might not have heard this part of what faith is, and definitely not the business part, right? Not everybody who's preaching the gospel has a background in business and successful in that background. So I'm just really excited that you're sharing your time with us. And we didn't even really get into the new venture that you're going into about the business coaching. So if you will, just for as long as you want, just share what it is that you're looking to do for other entrepreneurs in this next season of your life.
Yeah, thank you. So I just, over the last few years, by nature of, people asking for support and help, I started business coaching, and I did it as a way of giving back. I did it through EO Accelerator here in my local chapter. I found that I loved it. I found success. I found when my mentees were meeting their goals and slaying their milestones, it was like this teacher in me. The teacher in me lit up. When your students are learning something, you just love seeing those aha moments. And I loved seeing other people win. And when you look back at how far you've come, I think the way that we continue to grow, I stand on the shoulders of other giants. I consider my grandmother, my mother, my parents. They taught me so much, but I also see it as, who can stand on my shoulders, and how can I help that person, male or female, that version of who I used to be. I know how it feels, and I want to see them win. And so I started coaching, business coaching, and it's really just revolves a lot around mindset, goal setting, and working our way back from that. I think there is an element of the systems, the operations, numbers. Numbers is such key part of that coaching, even though I don't consider myself a numbers person, but we definitely dive into that. I bring in people that will help me, that are people like you, that are definitely have the knowledge, the training, the certificates to show, but in collaboration with support like that, like amazing, brilliant minds like yours, we work through those things. And it's just, there's EOS coaching, and there's Pinnacle, and there's all these business coaching that are amazing. I've done EOS for many, many years, my team and I. So I love that, but that's one facet. This is business coaching on steroids, because it relates to the leader, the business. Your business will only go as high as your mindset. The buck stops with you, the leader of your business. And if you are in this rut, or if you've hit a ceiling, or if you're burnt out, that's what we work on. And you found a level of success. I work with people that have found a level of success. Maybe they're the 6-figure earner, low, mid, even high 6-figure earner, but they just hit a ceiling. They're wanting to go to 7 or 8 figures, but that going from 6 to 7 figures, depending on where you are, is tough. But when you pass the 1 million and you're going to 5 million, and then from 5 million to 10 million, every tier is it's excruciating up leveling in a lot of areas. And so we work on that. And that's what I love to do, is take you from, maybe from D to the next tier. We don't really start with the A entrepreneur. They've had to they've figured out a few things, and love doing that. Right now I'm working on one-on-one clients. I have a few. I will be opening up as soon as I'm done with this cycle. We'll be opening up for another few one-on-one clients. And then we will probably be launching a group coaching at the beginning of fall, right after summer. And so just so that I could serve a little bit more people at once, and a medium entry point. And there's also power in community. Yeah. Jasmine, your wife, and I are part of this amazing community. And there's value in that as well. And so that's what I'm currently doing. You can find me on marthapicciao.com and all my socials. I'm sure we'll tag them all here, but I would love to help you if you're that entrepreneur who is either burnt out, has found a level of success and wants to keep going, or even just wants to get exit out of your business, but still in it. You still want to run it, and you just need to get out of it. Everyone talks about running your business and not running, and your business not running your life, but it's hard. Yeah. That switch is hard. It takes some skill and mentorship. And I was able to grow because of amazing mentors and people in my life, and putting myself in rooms that I didn't feel prepared, and investing massive amounts of money that I felt I couldn't afford. But that's where it's at. Yeah. So, thanks for asking.
No, that's so great. We will link all that in the show notes. And for those who are kind of hitting a plateau, Martha would be great. Obviously, you've got to hear her story and the different seasons that she's been involved in. And I know just by who she surrounds herself with too, that there's a lot more wisdom than we can cover here. And a short 30, 40 minutes. But Martha, I just so appreciate you being on here and being vulnerable and sharing the testimony. And yeah, really enjoy seeing where you've come. And it's cool to hear about the counselors and the wise counsel that you have surrounded yourself with that has helped too, because I think that's something that everybody can glean from, whether it's business coaches or say CPAs or lawyers or real estate developers. Like there's counsel in all areas of life. I will say we have one final question for you. You had no idea that we end every show with a question, but if you're ready, we can transition into that. It is, Martha, what is one truth about money that most people regard as myth?
One truth about money. I would say the saving piece, holding on to saving out of, for a rainy day. I do think that you should have, your bucket of savings. But I think when I look at, or when I see a lot of people just in my network, there's fear around risk and investment and leveraging some of what you have to either grow your wealth or grow your business or grow your retirement, whatever that is for you. We're all working towards something different. Mm-hmm. But I think in the end, that fear and that holding on may not get you to where you want to go. There is power in taking some risks. Some people have higher risk tolerance. Those people are me. Yeah. Less risk tolerance for people like my husband. And we usually marry each other,
Yeah.
But I think there's value in that, finding the middle ground. If you're married and you're married to someone opposite of you, we think listening to that and working together towards your goals and taking risks and not holding on to the fear. Fear is paralyzing, and there is no winning in fear. You will lose every time.
Amen. Well said. Perfect love casts out fear, as our Lord would say. So really appreciate it, Martha. Thank you so much. You got a powerful story, and excited for those who are listening. And to those listening, thank you for joining us. And until next time, God bless you and keep moving forward.
Thank you, Chris, for having me.
Of course.